I'm a therapist, a certified sex addiction therapist, a double master with ministry and counseling, and then I went through a certification for sex addiction. And as we go along, you'll maybe understand why that might be. But I have offices in Bellevue, and then I have groups going every night of the week for guys. So even if you don't need a support group, maybe you know somebody who does. There are brochures on that back counter. Please grab one and give it to your pastor, give it to a buddy, keep one for yourself. And also the presentation you're going to see today. Grab a brochure. It talks about 3 different presentations I give to groups. There's no charge. Come to your men's breakfast. I'll come for free. If you're in a 45-minute driving range, let's put it that way. You may have to pay me gas if it's more than that. But no, I'll gladly do that and look forward to it. So, again, I already warned somebody. You're worried about all these PowerPoint slides. We won't even see maybe a fourth of those. So you're really getting more than one presentation. I have a presentation I do for pastors, just targeted to the audience. So I'll try to keep you on track paper-wise. And somebody feel free to shout out, hey, we're on page such and such if I jump past. So there's big portions towards the end that I reserve for clinicians or maybe a staff training. I'll come to a staff training at your church, if you like, on this topic. But hey, let's jump in. That's who I am. Here's a map of the world. In the orange, there's our Western Hemisphere. You recognize that. Now, wait, there's only 2 little countries in gray. Well, this isn't exactly a map of the industrialized world, but this is where pretty much 90% accuracy where the birth rate has ceased. And I'm going to explain what that I think is the cause of that. It's below a replacement rate. You got to have 2.1 babies per mama to replace your next generation. 2.3 if you're in the third world. So the title today, Porn, the Growing Pandemic. There's a time, you might know this, but porn was illegal. I grew up in Oklahoma, Bible Belt. No X-rated movies, okay? So when I went down to Texas, porn was legal. In fact, they had a porn drive-in. I was going to seminary and had a drive-in just outside of town, and finally the temptation was just too strong. And at that time, I would have been what would be 3% of the population today, who by the age of 21 had not seen a porn movie, okay? So I'm showing you my ignorance here, I guess was what I would say, about porn, and still today probably, but... So, okay, I'm going to go to bring up the courage. Here I go. And I'm sure, there'd be a dean, not much bushes in West Texas, mesquite trees, right? But there'd be some guy in the bushes taking down license plate, maybe the dean or one of his cronies, and really already nervous. So I pulled in at the drive-in. Here I am, okay? And this is my cure porn, by the way. And the movie starts, not much dialogue, as you might guess, old-fashioned bad lighting, all that stuff. And I'm not doing anything, just sitting there, hands on the wheel. My car begins to rock back and forth. There are bright lights swirling everywhere. And my heart says, wind is whipping around. This is it. I am at a porn theater. The Lord's come back, and I'm at a porn theater. Yes. And a helicopter had come down and hovered about 20 feet above the hood of my car to watch the movie. Oh. And I said, okay, that's my sign. And I drove off. So I can't say that's the last movie I ever watched, but I think God has somehow protected me to be in a space to have some integrity to do this work and help guys. And you're going to hear it because I know there's none of us who haven't been impacted. I was talking with 10 years ago, my 69-year-old housekeeper. Quite a limber gal. She had OCD. I mean, that's the kind of housekeeper you want. She kept that thing immaculate. Okay, she could bend over and touch the palms of her hands to the floor. I mean, don't try this unless you have a doctor's permission. Okay? It will kill you. And then I saw some pictures. She would bring me Christian poetry every day. And I started talking to her. Let's call her Betty. And, hey, babe, is that a photo of you? It was about 25 years ago. She said, yeah. She kind of hung her head. She was working out, really buff. And kind of hung her head and said, yeah, I'm not real happy about that photo. Or proud of that time. I said, well, why is that? Well, I was involved in porn movies. My 69-year-old housekeeper. Pornography has impacted all of our lives. If not you, your dad. If not your dad, your brothers. If not your brothers, your sons. Right? You know that. So today, if I don't toss my clicker here, I want to, really the purpose today, let's pull a mask off modern pornography. Let's understand the damage and the impact. It's not just to couples, but individuals. And it's damaged in a lot of ways. And finally, at the end, I want to provide a spark of hope to how people can get help with this, okay? And so we're going to go through modules with colored backgrounds. That'll be the section we're in. You can ask questions at any time, but if you can reserve them to, we'll do a little summary of that section, and I'll take questions at that time. If you have questions, feel free to ask away. So let's jump in. So here's our agenda. Only got to go through maybe a third of this. Let's understand what a pandemic is. Why people view porn. Their habits, search habits. The damage it has, and then look at couples and families, and include in that section, what is it doing to that birth rate? We won't cover this light gray stuff, save that for another day, but we will talk about recovery, which is porn's extinction, okay? Most of the slides will be from Covenant Eyes. I just try to make it user-friendly and digestible for you. So all this information is out there already. Except the original research, and I'll point out when it's not out there. What is a pandemic? We've heard of epidemic. Pandemic, something global. Some people use the word Holocaust, worldwide. So, let's understand exponential growth. Here you are at CenturyLink Field. It's 1 o'clock. Kickoff next September. The Seahawks are going to even do better. 1 p.m., but instead of a football game, okay, you're in the highest seat up there in the bleachers, way up there. Instead of a football game, we made that stadium airtight, watertight. We're going to drop a drop of water on the 50-yard line. Instead of the, coin toss, drop of water. Now, water's going to double every minute. You got that? One drop of water is going to double every minute. Okay, here's your quiz question. How long till that water reaches you?
An hour.
We're getting close. Somebody looked ahead on the notes. That's a good job. No, you didn't. That's a good guess. It's that quick. 49 minutes to get to the top of that state. It's hard for us to get our heads around that, isn't it? That fast. Here's this better. When's it 93% full? 7% full. At 149 it's full. 145, that stadium is probably waist deep, probably deeper than these ankle deep folks here. So I'm like Noah here. You don't have time to get out. It's too late. You got to already made a decision. You've got to get from the top of those bleachers, unless you're a good swimmer, of course. But the point is, you have to take immediate action because of exponential growth. Just want to leave that image with you of what is exponential growth. 2014, Ebola was discovered in West Africa. It eventually affected 3 different countries. Ebola is wicked stuff. Bleed from your gums. Nausea, okay? Terrible stuff. And look at the cases here. Oh, just a few. 200 going along. When it hits this red line, you've got serious problems. That's exponential growth. That's growing faster and faster each day, really. So doubling now every 28 days, every 24 days. Well, what happens if the pandemic proceeds unchecked? I wonder what would have happened. Ebola, you've heard of it, right? 2016, everyone would be infected, theoretically, if it didn't stop at that rate. Well, I don't feel all that good today, but I don't have the flu, don't have a cold. You feeling okay? You don't have Ebola?
No.
Nobody else with Ebola? So somehow we stopped Ebola, okay? But before that happened, before they got under control, 90% fatality rate. At best, you can bring that down to 50%, okay? That's with protocols, a lot of things put in there. So the CDC developed a 4-fold protocol to really get Ebola stopped in its tracks. First, you have to identify the infection quickly. That involves really pulling out people who are infected, who are having symptoms, and quickly getting to them. Then you got to treat the ill with, isolation. They can't be touching other people. So here's the kid's situation where the places you go to get better, hospital, that's where you're going to go to get sick during a pandemic. Funerals, disease spreaders. You can't go to funerals. Family gatherings, anathema. Next, they attend to the family members, the people. Who has this person been in touch with? Where has the damage happened in their family members, okay? And finally, you need to address further symptoms. You might avoid that, even if with 90%, you're the 10% who didn't get Ebola. Guess what? Or you got Ebola and you survived. There's post-Ebola, which causes blindness. Well, the reason why am I talking about this? This is the same protocol we use professionally to treat porn addiction. Those 4 steps. And we'll unpack that here in the next few minutes. Okay, so here is the really porn viewing. These are views, okay, in the millions. So smartphones have really been the cause of viewing pandemic, and we'll see how that played out. So back in 2001, you only had 23 million views annually of porn. High speed was just getting going, and internet, right? And then you didn't have smartphones for the next 6 years. So you had kind of this linear growth. It's growing, tripling by 2006. But then something happens. Look at this climb. Uh-oh. This is not a linear scale. That's exponential. The engineers out there understand what we're talking here. What does it really look like? 2021, 196 million views. So it doesn't even show up on a scale of millions. It's not, this is in billions. Now, 2007, here's the ramp up. And this is where we are today, somewhere out here, right? Now, Juniper Research think that's going to tail off. I don't know what kept it from going right to the scene, but this, there's only so many people on Earth. There's only so many devices you can view porn on. So, yes, it will hit some kind of a taper at some point. Unlike Ebola, porn reaches everywhere. Let's take a little tiny country up there. Everybody know where Iceland is? Out in the ocean up there? I don't know what they do in Iceland. About the size of Snohomish County, maybe, I don't know. What's to do in Iceland? 95% are on the internet every day. Okay? Here's what's really concerning. 1/3 of men are viewing porn daily. That's the average of like a 30-year-olds in our culture. That's the whole island. Okay? They even thought about opting out of the porn side of the internet for a while and tried to get legislation. That backfired. Highest rates, 5th highest rates per capita in the European consortium there. How do people view porn? It's really changed, right? Used to be laptop, maybe work computer if you're really risky. Phones. In 1 year, it's jumped from 61 to 70%. Phones are the preferred device. Not because of screen size, but because of that privacy, the convenience. Nobody can see you. You can be laying next to a spouse in bed, thinking she's asleep, watching porn, right? Virtual reality. You've been getting those goggles for Christmas. We got some in our house. Trust they're not being used inappropriate. You did? Okay. You can put them on your phone, you put the goggles on, and you're kind of in a world all your own. You're not in, no other visuals coming in. So it's great. I watched the Blue Angels. You can look out, there's the wing, you feel like you're... And you don't get the sensation until motion kicks in. So even though some of those early release pixel qualities were probably pretty poor, well, 10% of porn is coming out virtual reality now. If you think porn was addictive before, virtual reality will create binges. It will create less, you think you're in a private environment, you can't hear when people are coming and going. Look at this curve. That's just 1 year. If I put a ruler here, somewhere like that, that looks like it's starting to be exponential, possibly. About where things were back in 2007 when the new device, smartphone, came out. Right? Okay, so let's look and see where we're headed here. In this 4-year window, again, this is older data, a couple years old, going from not quite daily views per smartphone, but now we're getting real close, right? 365 days in the year. It's a new coffee bus stop diversion. Homework pal. 33% of high school students are out there watching porn while they're doing their homework. 33%, a third. We got 250 million people accessing mobile content here. So let's look at some takeaways here for this section. The smartphone has launched, jumped from millions of views now to billions, and how you even estimate that, I don't know, but it's the top research place in the world, Juniper. What we're looking at by 2020 is a 42% increase. Yes, that's not exponential, but that's pretty strong, still a very strong linear increase, right? This isn't going away. We have a tsunami. So, let's stop and think about why people view porn. Here's a verse you've heard a lot, right? Do not look at a woman lustfully. I'm all for that verse. That's a kind of a prohibitive verse, kind of the do not side of things. I want to show a verse that I really hope will become the predominant way we as men experience the opposite sex. Treat them as mothers. You know the verse, right? Timothy, daughters. We got to get there. And that can't be just avoidance. Are you with me? So, this section, let's look at, contributions to the growth, some self-reported reasons why people are viewing. That will also help us inform, well, how is that affecting them? When you understand something called a neural pathway. I'm not a big brain guy. Your brain's like a black box to me. You can't do anything about it even other than make choices. Even it is screwed up. I mean, there's some things you can do. There's brain trainings, and yes, you can do something about it. That's what I want to share with you in the long run. And then why do guys view this? Why is this so tough for guys? Not so much for women. Although women, this will surprise you. They're in the mix on porn viewing. So all kinds of devices to view on. We just talked about virtual reality came out a couple of years ago. That will be highly addictive. Social media. You can do porn with Facebook. People get on there and even non-pornographic intended venues and platforms are going to be used for porn. Email. 8% is porno. Unfiltered access. Or the AAA engine. It's affordable, accessible, and anonymous. There's exceptions to all three of those, right? But you get to porn anytime, anywhere, pretty much free. Just an unlimited quantity and variety of genres and categories. But here's the surprising thing. You know how many movies are made in Hollywood? Anyone would guess each year? Think a ballpark guess. I think, you don't quote me exactly, but probably close to 600 major releases in Hollywood. So take that, multiply by 40, there's your major porn releases. And then you got the ever-expanding demographics of viewership and people trying to get in the game. Now we're going to see even younger and younger women, kids. Pretty alarming. Okay, here's a report. And why do you use porn? They said. Well, here's a pretty obvious one. Physical release. Autoerotica. But that's not everybody, okay? A lot of people can view porn and not go there. That's its own dynamic. So sometimes people are just trying to do this to get ready for the next experience with a real person, they think. Although I'll show you the flip side of that coin here in a little while. A lot of people out of curiosity. A lot of kids don't start out going, hey, I just want to watch some porn. They're very shocked by it. They don't start out that way. And somebody shows them or sends them something. This number, about 50%, applies to pastors too. That's how a lot of pastors get started. Something gets sent to them, okay? Or they find something accidentally, and they got some free time, and here we go. I hear this a lot. I can look at things I can't have in real life. There's a dynamic, and we won't have time to cover it. It's deeper into your slides that won't be on here today, but talking about how unobtainability, it's that woman or girl or somebody that I couldn't have. It's not the one next door, it's the one I can't have that creates that ongoing surge sometimes, fantasy, as well as taboo and a lot of things. And then boredom, young people. A lot of free time, no structure. This could be guys too on a weekend, married or single. So here's the important piece. All these ways people reasons people view porn play into sex addiction in one way or another. And I'll talk about that. So here are 4 ways that we know people view porn and what's going on when it's happening. One is arousal. You get sometimes an adrenaline rush if you're enjoying riskier and riskier behaviors. So instead of somebody trying not to get caught, they might edge it a little closer. Now somebody's in the house. Now somebody's in the next room. I'm still viewing. Spouse is asleep, I thought, next to me. I'm still viewing. Amps up the adrenaline. Here's a key piece to understand. There is no courtship in the porn viewing process. It's a one-way passive experience for us guys. Numbing. I just need to veg out. I'm stressed out. I want to medicate. I want to sleep. I just want to chill out. Just let it wash over me, Numbing. And with each one of these, and don't quiz me what every neurochemical is, but there's a neurochemical that goes along with these. So these aren't just imagined, these are real. Fantasy. This is what we were talking about earlier. Elements of conquest, novelty, taboo. This is where porn viewing will take somebody outside of their gender preference because now they've let themselves become aroused just by exposure to something that might have repulsed them a few months ago. That's where fantasy can drive that. And then deprivation. Binge purge. The purge is the spouse, no longer sexual there, but plenty of binge with. Or it may just be with porn. I feel terrible. Christian guys are twice as likely to feel bad about their porn use. So the guilt comes over and let's dump all that stash. Let's get all those downloads out of here. New Year's resolution. I'm done with porn. See how long that lasts unless you've got some edifice in place to sustain that change. why do guys have trouble with porn? In guys only does this area of the brain called the hypothalamus, where you register survival urges, food, hunger, thirst. Survival urges light up in this area of the brain. That doesn't excuse it, of course. It just says, yeah, we experience it as much more of a need. If we guys are honest, they say, it's need that. It's not that I want it, I need it. Where the survival needs get registered. Women don't, by the way. Their brains light up different ways. They still enjoy porn, not in the hypothalamus. So some takeaways from this section here. Well, we learned why people view, a variety of reasons, but they all impact these 4 neural pathways. The good news about that can help us understand where the risks are. You know, that teen that has all Saturday free, he needs some structure, okay? He needs a game plan to help intervene on those behaviors. And he should be part of designing that. So this is how I help people during the week. And we learn men view sex as a survival need. Questions on that? I'll take a sip here. Well, there he is. An untouched photo. Well, that's not an untouched photo. That's pretty exaggerated. No. Is this how the average porn viewer looks? No. Okay, it's a caricature. But maybe that's how he feels, right? I mean, he's losing sleep. He's not doing as well at work. He spends time, I don't know, there's the wife. She has to wear sunglasses, be incognito. I don't know who's playing catch with Billy out there, but it's not Dad, right? Somebody else.
Going on the roof.
Is what? It's throwing it on there, bouncing it off the wall. There it is. That's what you got to do. Dad's not there. So again, this isn't to shame me, but this is the average porn viewer looks like you and me. I like that guy. Google searches, 1 in 5 was porn. Now that's down to 1 in 4. You know, that's old news. King David, well, didn't have a laptop, but he had a cooktop, right? Got him in trouble. So in this section, let's look at how not guys, just everybody. By the way, these aren't Christian statistics. This is the population in general from the Barna Institute. If you've heard of Barna, major research outfit. And I'll show how this can be improved, and it's further into your handouts, by the way, too. With when people are active in their faith, we'll talk about some disincentives, predictors of who are less likely to view porn. So, how do guys? First, we know they view more graphic stuff. We don't need the preamble; they go right for it. Here's the stats. Pretty concerning. It's the majority of our culture. Look at the age breakdowns. And I'll show you a pie chart here in a little bit that will surprise you, the changes that. So this is monthly viewing by age range, with the highest being the under 30 crowd, obviously. What about weekly viewing? Well, the numbers come down just a little bit for under 30. These other age ranges can almost be half what that is in terms of. So maybe 88% of our guys out there are seeing porn sometime during the year, even if it's very intermittently. It affects people. Okay, here's that pie chart I predicted. And it used to be you could take the age ranges of men from teens on up every 12 years, put them in a pie slice, and those slices would be exactly equal. Just all guys can view porn, right? There's no accepted age group, even elderly. Now, here's how it looks like. The pie is a little out of balance toward the younger folks. And average age has come down from 41 to 35, age 35. So, we talk about what is that it's just been normalized, right, in our culture. Even you go on, this is the alarming thing, a talk show therapist, Oprah therapist or something will say, you should just view porn with your boyfriend or spouse and not make such a big deal of it, okay? That's what we hear. We'll talk about that. Women prefer a different kind of pornography, but they still will view it. Now here's the startling difference. Look at those monthly viewers by age group. Under 30, dramatically different than over 30. And women 50 and up, what's porn? Okay? I mean, really, they're not going to see it very, very minimally. You can take that in the church, probably half of that. Take that 4%, 2%. So when they find their husband, fiance, boyfriend on porn, there's a collision. There's a radical shock that happens. Women viewing weekly. Now this really drops down. So the monthly viewing is up there in the under 30s. Not so much. And then look at the over 50 group. It's not on the charts. Not a pastime. Still, men are 5 times more likely to view porn than gals. Okay, we're going to get out of the stats here real quick. I just want to give you a little, overview of this, and we'll move on past it. So here's a couple of numbers. Yeah, if you've gone outside your marriage, you're twice as likely to view porn. If you've had paid sex, you're 3 times as likely to view porn. But what's the real story? We've got the cart in front of the horse here, or the cart behind the horse. Switch that around. Porn is not the successor, it's the predecessor to those behaviors. I ask guys, well, when did you start viewing porn? Was that after these, behaviors? No, it was before. So, again, free porn's overtaken paid. This is not surprising. Here's the 3 ways it comes into people's lives. Free samples, illegal, pirated stuff. Here's a pop quiz. Married guys, do they view more or single guys? More. Well, you'd think a lot of married guys out there view, but still single guys still view a little bit more frequently or often than married. That is switched around for women. And I don't have a hypothesis other than that. Maybe, contrary to common mythology, women want real sex, not porn sex. Why are gals viewing porn anyway? Maybe to try to see what their boyfriend wants or husband wants or whatever, or just make them meet their own needs because he's off doing porn. There's the truth sometimes. Okay, so protectors, these aren't real protectors, I put down quotation marks, but people less likely to view porn. If they're happily married, you're 61% less likely to get involved with porn. And sure, there's work to do. With a real person with 5 senses, sometimes is going to say no, right? You've got to work and talk through that stuff. Teen children are less likely to be people with teen children. And the story here may be, maybe they're hoping that they don't find the porn they're viewing sometimes, right? That's popular, was the case in Britain at least. One of the main reasons they were less likely to view themselves. So here's the big proponent that we're hearing in the culture. Cosmopolitan will tell you 74% of partners, lovers, really want to view porn together. Really? They caught 24 people right off the street, just in the moment. You have porn on your phone? A fourth of them owned it. Of course, maybe there's a certain percent that wouldn't, depending on if that was being videotaped or not. But at least 24%, yeah, I've got porn on my phone right now. Does your partner know about that? Not really, 84% said they didn't know. So here's some takeaways from this viewing. These aren't new stats for you probably. Yeah, guys and gals are viewing porn. Younger males, it's weekly. And then I would say, sad to say, maybe daily. And that's at the point where you think you can stop. Maybe you tried a few times. I'm here to help. Multi-daily. That's somebody who's now, their life, their job, their work, they're going to have to take that out into the public instead of the bedroom. And that really causes a ripple of consequences for their lives. So, yeah, 61% of a major porn site's viewership is under 34. Women is up, especially among younger women, but still never going to reach what it will with men, ever, because they don't have a hypothalamus. We've learned that, right? They do, but they don't light up when they have one. No, don't quote me. Redo the tape, please. Rewind. They have a hypothalamus. I want to correct that. Porn is not solo activity. It is solo activity. It's never, couples will try it. Maybe even half couples try it and say, oh, this will spice things up. She gets bored, and the main message a woman gets from pornography, I'm inadequate. I'm not enough. Mm-hmm. But now she's green-lighted to him to keep on viewing. Think he's going to stop when she stops? Mm-hmm. Probably not. That's the bind, right? The double bind. I know I've been roaring along here. Any questions? I don't want to... A lot to cover.
Yeah, do you see different percentages of people who watch porn in the United States versus Europe? Is it higher in the United States or higher in Europe?
I would say higher, because there's countries in Europe where I'm going to show you these statistics in a little bit, where any age can watch porn. They don't have no censorship, so we're going to let our kids watch anything we watch. Yeah, it's their problems there. We'll talk about it.
Question?
Yeah.
I know I read found statistics and a lot of the numbers about the percentages in the church. Are you going to talk about that?
That's further in there, and just for lack of time, what I would tell you is this: if a guy is active in his faith, he's about half as likely to view. So that's a protector, if you would. I mean, a disincentive for viewing porn to be active in your faith. And for women, it takes it down even below for half, whatever age. So, active in our faith, regular church attendance. Now, do these alone, but they co-occur with people who view porn less likely. So, I would say yes, faith does make a difference if you're active in it. Just nominal Christian, 64% of Christian men view porn, 65% of non-Christian. That sounds pretty close to me. Okay. So, active in your faith is the difference in that number. Questions back in the back?
Oh, yeah. Do you have anything about statistics of porn use among, homosexual men?
I don't. That's a good question, and I'm sure it's up there too. I just don't have the stats on that. Thanks for checking on that. I will look into that. Okay, how does porn impact the average guy? And then we'll look at couples, and we'll be lucky to get all this in here and talk about how we can get some help. So, little quote from Proverbs. I don't know what that guy's doing. Maybe he's not viewing porn, but he's at his wit's end.
Calculus.
Yeah. Calculus, that'll do it. So, we're going to look at dangers of self-made, just toying around. Maybe you could look at that. Disinhibitor to become, porn is a disinhibitor, meaning it encourages behaviors. 1/3 of guys who have a regular porn use habit will at some point go into the community. Massage, barista, prostitution, escort. It will happen with 1/3 of heavy porn use. We'll talk about pain of discoveries a little bit. We're going to move quickly through this. Feel free to stop me if you have questions. And then, the downside of trying to normalize porn. And then some of the more disastrous outcomes that are out there. So who can be a porn director?
Anybody with a phone.
Anybody with a selfie stick or with a smartphone. You take the video, you can edit it. This can be highly addictive and mostly probably practiced among younger ages. But I had one guy, and again, these will be anonymous stories with details changed randomly here. We'll call him the sports car kid, but he His first experience was one with a group of individuals and with a paid sex worker. Now, what message does that send to a guy when his first experience is that kind of a scenario? Well, one, sex is sport. Sex is performance. And you probably get those messages without having to see a paid sex worker or have a group of guys around you. You know, that's a strong theme in our culture. Well, what's the harm in a little erotica? If you go way back and confess, I've seen one or two, the Playboy forums. The guy thought he was actually an executive at a major software company in our area that will go unnamed, but he decided he would, well, I want to become an author, and this will be in my vehicle. I'll use a pseudonym. No one will know it's me. I'll write about erotic stories, and that way I can build my penmanship and my writing skills. And I guess I'll just use for the characters in my story, maybe I could use my spouse and my adult daughter. And yeah, that'll probably be okay. Well, they find those things out. I don't know if that will ever get repaired. We're talking about layers of betrayal when they're seeing their own wardrobe, seeing their own home layout, those kinds of things online. And even if you use different names, it's a small world, right? People could have, they felt an immense amount of betrayal from that. The uninvited email or a sex. A lot of people in our culture, especially young people, don't see sexting as pornography. They see it as friend communication. So they think they can send a photo. The sad part of that, right down here in Olympia, Washington, we had a 14-year-old get prosecuted because his girlfriend, he got a hold of girlfriend photos, whether she sent them to him or not initially, he just mass-produced them to the winds and was prosecuted. I don't know how that case came out. Somebody could go look. That was about 2010. But a 14-year-old prosecuted for child pornography distribution because she was underage. Okay. There's a guy who very passively, and this may be, somebody like us, construction work, it was his culture in the construction world to get these funnies. People send joke and gag photos, and he even had somebody from out of town, a gal sent him some topless photos. Well, he didn't think about it. He didn't do anything with it. He just let it sit there on his phone history. And the girlfriend or spouse went and got the phone history, 3 years worth. Let's see here, found the photos. Now she doesn't. Women go to the worst case, right? Theophilize. He must be seeing her. He must be doing that when he's out of town. And it was started as a joke. Very damaging. And then the worst boomerang you could ever get. Well, again, we talked about a third of porn users will go out commuting one way or go online, do some photo exchange, Craigslist or something. The guy did that, took some photos of himself, and he said, no, I got to stop this. Okay, I'll just put these in a folder here on my laptop for a rainy day. Well, his 12-year-old daughter comes along and finds that folder. Now you've got repair with the spouse, repair with a family member, a lot of damage happening. These are real life stories. I just want you guys to see what we think is what touted in our culture is a harmless behavior. How harmless is this? So we're going to talk about a third of guys will go out there. So white collar, mixed careers and names. These are people I've seen, but this isn't to shame anybody. This is actually people are working hard to get into not just improved, but to be porn free and to be in recovery from sexual addiction. So here's some of the things people might choose to do. You can look through that list. I won't go down it one by one. You can read. Affects blue collar guys the same way. Just variety of choices somebody might get hooked up into. Here's the tying, the linking commonality, common denominator between all these. Porn was a strong co-occurring addiction or predecessor in those situations. So discovery is someone, often a spouse, family member, involuntarily unveiling some kind of betrayal behavior. That can happen in a variety of ways, from finding somebody's history, may not be yours, but somebody's history, walking in. That could be a huge shock for somebody, walking in on somebody using this. Or you're caught in a lie. I wasn't online. Well, this says you were. And then here's where, especially with Christian guys, I mean, how long can you actually lie point blank, just eye to eye to somebody without eventually something coming out? Receipt, shameful looks, spouse becomes a detective. Sexual purchases that you forgot to, all those debit purchases have histories, right? So here's the thing to say about that, and it doesn't always equate to what the perception is. So what I call this dynamic, that you get the collateral, sometimes exaggerated or disproportional impact of what might have actually happened. So there's a lot of confusion around the discovery. And then if somebody does own some of that with partial disclosure, but not fully, it's not likely to be received on that first go around. So here's some other ways, that can at times be helpful and will corroborate or other behavior. Viagra condom use. We don't use condoms. Or why are you having half of your Viagra over here and half of it is in our bedroom? And those kinds of questions, right? STDs. How painful is it for a spouse to get HPV and catch it from their own husband? That happens. Arrest stings. I had a guy who went to massage place and just price shopping 3, 4, 5 times or more. About the umpteenth time he went in, hadn't paid for a thing. He ordered something, out come the cuffs, off you go. And again, he didn't get prosecuted, thank him, but that was a warning, that was a wake-up call for him. And lots of scenarios. So police are out there, pretending to be 16-year-old girls online, waiting for someone to take the bait. You've seen that on MSNBC, right?
I have a quick story on that.
Mm-hmm.
We had a police. I work with educators.
Okay.
We had a professional police officer who does that. She opened up her laptop and she immediately opened up the site and began to just type in her name that obviously is connected to being 13 years old. And immediately she had 7 followers trying to interact with her.
Yeah.
And it only took less than 15 minutes for one guy in particular to say, let's meet. And she said, my mom's about to come in the door, so I'll talk to you later. And then she closed it and she said, we will arrest that guy in probably less than 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And so it was just...
They won't let go. Once the hook is in, yeah. So you can say, and again, that's the one way to help people get help. But there's other ways too, way before you get to that stage. Just reach out. Somebody get some help. Blackmail. I had a guy that was commuting to Dubai. That's not every day, and he doesn't live here, so that's probably nobody you would know. But he gets called one day, a couple months later, and it's the escort that he had hooked up with somewhere in London or on the way. And, you're going to have to help me out. I'm pregnant. And he says, dodge the bullet there. I had a vasectomy. It's not me. She says, I don't care. I'll tell your wife anyway. Mm-hmm. So there's where, whether it's economic or even emotional blackmail can start to be part of this journey here, guys. It can be very painful and destructive. Guys have sex troubles when all they've been interacting with is paper, celluloid, and cyberspace. ED can be a huge there. It is correctable and can be reversed by making changes in your brain, by changing behavior. It can be difficult to have sex with a real person. You're programming yourselves. 20% of guys who have a regular internet habit, they don't want any girlfriend. They don't want any spouse. They just want their internet gals, okay? 20%. They want a partner. So, porn is increasing the expectation of the frequency of sex while simultaneously decreasing your ability to have any kind of a normative mutual experience. And it will even morph our arousal template into outside of our gender preference and things like that, we know. So, let's keep pushing on here. So here's the downside where I do see that, sometimes there will be an alarmist reaction. It's understandable because the spouse's trust has been, or girlfriend, has been shattered. What we do, what helps to have a therapeutic container around that is to minimize. Shame is not a long-term change incentive. You can shame yourself, but it really only actually increases your likelihood that you're going to go out and do something again. It is not effective as a long-term inhibitor for behavior.
Are you saying shame?
Shame.
Okay.
We will have shame attached to guilt. There is a healthy shame. The unhealthy shame is the piece that people unduly feel the worthlessness. They're wearing it like a garment, if you will. Reduce the count. So when somebody does cite, well, let's separate. There's risk there, right? Reduced accountability in the house. And if they're just doing this on their own with no therapist or any third parties, kind of pastor, somebody kind of helping them walk through this gauntlet, it's be very dangerous. Leaving language is frequent. Hypervigilance is the term we give to the detective spouse who's going to police the helicopter over everything somebody does and check all those, where are you? And this is pretty normal early on, but the sooner somebody can de-escalate that and turn that over to somebody getting in recovery, the better off they're going to be. So it creates isolation, physical and emotional. And then a lot of guys will say, I'm being mothered, controlling this, because they feel that one downsmanship that this imbalance has created. And rather than initiating themselves, I will comply, I will voluntarily be transparent. If they don't, they're going to feel a lot of this. And they may feel some anyway. So those are some of the tragic consequences. So incongruent distancing can serve to escalate fear and suspicion. Couples can drift apart if they don't have somebody, a third party of some kind, stepping into that scenario to give some healing. Talk a little bit real quick on, older guys, myself and up, I'm old, I guess I am. 49% over 50 are being born. Here's the downside. They are much more susceptible to a sugar daddy, scam, somebody, the attention that could pull them into a financial compromise. Very easily had a gal take a guy one time into a fancy restaurant, I'll spend the whole evening with you if you'll buy me a bottle of wine. Well, they opened the bottle of wine. That's a $500 bottle of wine somebody's got to pay for now. The guy thought this is where it gets distorted, thinking that these partners, these people are really companions who aren't exploiting you for your finances, and they'll take them on trips or, get an illusion of relationship when there is no relationship. And some of these we'll just keep going past for sake of time. These are just examples of similar things. Worst case, somebody might, there's porn addicts in rest homes. But by the end, the family's kind of ostracized. Daughters won't have anything to do, say to him. Very tragic outcomes in those scenarios. Just a couple of those examples here. Any questions on this section here? We talked earlier on about co-viewing porn as a couple. What's the outcome there? Here's that scenario I walked through briefly. Wife watches with husband, loses interest very quickly. He continues. Now, when they've done that couple, if they accommodate that at all, think of what that's done. Now they're bringing other couples into their bedrooms. That's a swinging, swapping mindset that they've already permissioned kind of passively by doing that. Very, very disturbing. So, we know porn, sexual themes dominate porn. Cuckold experiences, somebody, will sometimes through viewing, and this maybe not so much in Christian circles, but could be any of these. Fisherman Bill, a guy had a fantasy of what if you were with another guy, and she kept, and to the spouse, he would talk about that, and then that would make her feel like, you're just giving me away, you're just giving me away. And obviously, there's a lot of dysfunction that can go on there, that kind of level of addiction. We'll pass by some of these examples, but here, youth, this is a popular search. Somebody might not be looking for child pornography at all, but they'll just put in some generic terms like youth. That's so ambiguous. The spouse finds that, they don't know what you're looking for, and that will create all kinds of alarm. This is a situation that did get really successfully repaired, and somebody really got recovery, but it started out with what could have been really devastating. Okay. I don't want to talk about sex positive. I have a whole presentation on the sex positive movement. That's a nice sounding term. Basically, that's a way to say anything outside of relationship is fair game for your sexual enjoyment, and we know that leads to disaster and horrendous things. But there's a whole underworld in our society of unseen sex-positive movement culture going on. And people will watch porn in that, one guy who's maybe the worst case, just completely didn't filter anything that came up on the internet. He just let it, the more bizarre, the better. And now he's being aroused by just things that aren't even sexual. Thank you, David. Okay, so these are some of the legal consequences. These are cases you may have heard of. Just things that start off maybe as curiosity just become extremely damaging legally. This right here could be a video camera. Maybe not quite that small, but James Bond type stuff is happening. You set that in the wrong place, you can go to jail. So some takeaways. All forms of self-made porn, erotic, Craigslist searching have tremendous risk and consequences to the originator, as well as sometimes their family members. We looked at 14 scenarios of community behavior. Every single one was disinhibited by pornography in some way or another. Different various kinds of discoveries of betrayal lead to serious consequences, sometimes even overreactions by that spouse, who now needs a lot of help to heal, because it is trauma. That's the main framework we use in the therapeutic world for a discovery of sexual betrayal. Now it's traumatic for that partner or spouse. Viewing porn is detaching, non-relational behavior. That's the main thing I'd like you to get out today. It's a sex killer. You want to kill the and guys will ask, well, if my wife is more available, I might not go to this. It's just substituting. When did you start getting porn? Well, when I was 10. Okay. That's been going on before you met your spouse. So how could, that not be maybe the chicken and the other be the egg? We start to become aware it's not what we think sometimes. Take a break. Anything on that section? Somebody have a question? Yeah. That
positive sex movement,
yeah.
What's your response to psychologists or psychiatrists who say, porn is healthy for you? It's the neuropathways, the addiction, the ways people become addicted.
So there's a whole study I do in a presentation you'd like to see, where I actually it's called, the magazine, it's online, it's called Psychology Tomorrow instead of Psychology Today. They want to be even more progressive than Psychology Today. And I pretty much step by step eliminate their rationale as bogus, and I can share that with a group or training sometime. People use language that sounds celebratory, but then they say, I can't live without it. What's it telling you? Can't live without it. It's addiction at that level. Who's being important here in this photo? I don't know. The dog, maybe for sure, right? I don't know. And hopefully some of those people aren't. And again, but this is the nature of devices. You can be on there and no one else knows what's happening at any time of day. So if you got kids, you want to be using those filters. So that's only one step, I realize. They're smart enough to get around half of it probably, but you need boundaries. So I'm going to go real quick because I do want to get to some hopefulness about this and leave time for maybe a question or two at the end. I won't spend too long. You've got this in your handout, so I'm going to just blast through this because I want to get to what's the hope for pornography in our culture, in our church. Here's the main thing porn does for a couple. It makes all this stuff unattractive. Monogamy, marriage, raising children. I am convinced it has demolished our replacement birth rate anywhere it's being viewed. Sure, people still might have a baby or two, but they're not going to have the 2 point something we need to replace the culture. And especially with young people who have no way to contextualize sex. It becomes recreational, cynicism about love, any kind of lasting relationship, family. Those are all unattractive things. Nobody has porn scene with the family there, right? It's all individuals, adults. Okay. Divorce and separation. It's basically from 1/3 to 2/3 a contributor, depending on the behavior. If it's chat, porn, or actually going out and finding a partner outside of your marriage. That's from the divorce attorneys. I'll get there in a second. It's a 90% co-occurring with people having affairs. And it will lead to more graphic, illegal, or unsafe material. That's that tolerance dynamic where the brain wants novelty, and once you excite it with something, that will become boring usually at some point. And you'll have to change the intensity, the frequency, or the content to get that same high. So here's those divorce lawyers chime in and say, hey, here's what this is going to do for your marriage, and helps, leads to these outcomes. Here's a big one that just seems true over and over. This is not everybody. There's still people having sex who've had a sexual addiction. But in 2/3 of couples, one or both have had their impact. Maybe it's the partner, maybe it's the person who's been a pornography addict. Their interest in regular sex is just tanked. It's going to have to be slowly recreated. Reintegration is a very slow process sometimes, if even possible. And so this is something about the partner experience. I'll go through it quickly, but mainly I want to show, hey, they feel rejected, insecure, less attractive, distant, emotionally detached. They end up having to be the ones to initiate sex, because if it's a guy, and a lot of women are using porn too, I would say that could be the flip case. But now they're in a double bind, initiating to get their own needs met. Do they have sex or not? Is the sex going to create him to be worse in his addiction? Or if I refrain, well, you just forget about me and go do that anyway. So, the user avoids sex with the partner. Remember, 20% don't want anything to do with the partner, or more, probably more than that now. He blames the partner for the couple's sex troubles. It's your problem. That's why I'm using the porn. And he wants them to participate in objectionable sex. Things that even the average porn worker who only lasts a year and a half in their career and pretty shredded when they're done can't keep up with. Objectionable sex. Here's how they feel: betrayed, abandoned, lonely, rejected. They have to compare themselves to online images. Cyber affairs are just as painful as real life affairs for most spouses, partners. And it creates trauma. So here's what I want to get to, and we'll leave a little time for the hopefulness. So if you saw that movie Inferno, anybody see that movie? Tom Hanks. There's a madman wants to release a virus on Earth to create the 6th extinction event because humans have just become too troublesome. We're population explosion. We got to do something. He thinks he's the fix for that. Tom Hanks is trying to find the virus. He's going to release it into a water supply. I think the Inferno virus is already here. It's my hypothesis. We have a different name for it. Here are the birth rates by even subcultures, different races in America. Every one of those stair steps is going down, if I'm reading that right. Nothing is going up. That's 20 years worth. So, well, women are just having careers. They're just waiting longer to have babies. How come the babies that should have happened here aren't showing up here, if that was the case? If it's just career related. A new form of birth control called porn. So here's a map of the United States. If you look at these numbers, these maps don't look all that much alike. You have shaded areas here, different shaded areas there. This is a map of per 1,000 broadband users, the ones subscribing to porn. Okay, subscribing to porn, not just free porn. So there's, how effective is that of average porn use? I don't know. Here is the decline in birth rate in 2007, when the smartphones came out, right? Decline in birth rate. So we're going to throw out a couple exceptions right away. I'm from Oklahoma. Highest divorce rate in the country, because it's the highest marriage rate in the country. There are no single people in Oklahoma. There are, but there's no single cultures. And my guess would be maybe North Dakota might fit in there too. So there's exceptions to this correlation. This is only a one-way correlation we're looking for. This porn decreased birth rate. Well, let's see. Here's high usage states of pornography. 10% or more, 5 to 9% decline in birth rate. Well, that's just 4 states with high usage. Here's medium usage of pornography and medium decline of birth rate. Here's light usage of pornography and light decline of birth rate. Now, while there's some exceptions in there, that's pretty coincidental to me. I'm not a statistician, so we can maybe blow these allegories away. And it's corollary data, it's not causational. Okay, so here's this birth rate. Look, remember the baby boomers? I'm one of them. Anybody born before the age of 1964 were the boomers that were well represented. Glad you're here. So, 4.5 worldwide birth rate. Lots of babies per mama. The first commercial porn movie. I don't know what that was. Behind the something door or Deep Throat. We've all heard that one. Since then, that's quite a ski slope. I call that Black Diamond. You're coming down pretty rapidly. Here, 1988, pornographers got a free ride, got a blank slate, free check. They cannot be prosecuted unless it's very extreme. There's a strong threshold of 3 different criteria. It's got to be offensive to the entire community and have no social redeeming value and all those things. Free ticket. Can't be prosecuted. And here we are today, just hovering right there, barely above the world birth replacement need of 2.3. Well, what about countries? Here's the countries, and here's the kind of porn they do. And we'll wrap this up here. So I'm going to go, all these are in your, maybe hard to read, but they're in your handouts. There's just not a single major country where porn's been embraced where there's a replacement birth rate. You can't even bribe people to have babies. Unless you have a secure pair bond, people will not have children. You can give them tax incentives. The government's tried it in Switzerland. You can't do it. And we go through Europe where porn's rampant, all kinds of porn, not a single replacement birth rate. Here's places where there is a replacement birth rate, but porn is illegal. Imagine that. Other problems, of course, in the third world, sex trafficking things. So I'll just blaze through this. Africa, there's where the babies are, and porn is not widely used or tolerated. So that's a hypothesis, but I think the data is pretty strong with that. Just the impact showing that, hey, even Muslim countries like Turkey, they legalized porn, they lost their replacement birth rate. It's on the cusp there. It should be 2.3. Okay. Takeaways, couples believe about monogamy, trust, fidelity is shattered with pornography. 2/3 to half of divorces. 68% of couples experiencing dramatic decrease in normal marital relations. Porn is the sex killer. Some of the other presentations you look at, porn among church folks, porn among pastors. I'd be glad to come and do these trainings for you. I know we got about 3 minutes. Let me see if I can just tie this all up and maybe share why am I doing this? Why has this impacted me? When was I married? 28 years ago. I was at my wedding. Pastor gave a real strong caution about divorce in the sermon. And my sister, who's very troubled, I didn't see this, but came up afterwards and just, bam! I mean, slapped him, hit him as hard as she could. I didn't learn about this until 2-3 weeks later. That's pretty alarming stuff. I found out much later my own dad had impregnated her at age 29. What do I find in his stash? Pornography. Now, does porn create that in every situation? No, there's a lot of other factors that happen. But none of us have been immune to the effect of porn. But in our lives, maybe our spouses, other family members, it's happening. There is a tie with violence, even though people say violence, hey, rape is coming down, porn is going up. I could debunk that for you. Let's talk about how do we get out of this? We've got to embrace faith-based recovery. That's what I'm all about. I use faith in everything I do. I open a meeting, 4 groups a week for guys. Open in prayer, we close in prayer. We use courtship from Ruth and Boaz. We're using stories of Joseph, escape ladder techniques, fire drills, things like that. Most therapists believe porn can be addictive, sex can be addictive. So here's the 7 steps. Somebody needs to get help. They got to break denial, get some awareness around addiction. The culture has pretty well embraced this, as we know, even above some of the professionals who politically try to keep sex out of the, I guess you call it the pathology category. We got to limit the damage with family members, as we've talked about before. Get sober, get integrity. And we'll end here in about a minute. Hang with me. Here's what I want you to take away about what is porn really. I want you to really get away. Is it just people having sex with a camera? The root word is pornai, prostitutes, writings about prostitutes. Well, porn, if you'll accept it, is just film prostitution. Yeah. Somebody's getting paid. Someone's getting paid. It is film prostitution. We vicariously participate in. Scripture has quite a bit to say about prostitution. So now we think, well, the Bible doesn't say anything about pornography. It does. It's prostitution. What can Christians do? Share biblical truths frequently and boldly about truths about human sexuality. Ruth and Boaz. Boaz had all 12 steps of courtship. He nailed them all. Go back and read the beautiful story of Boaz and Ruth in the book of Ruth. Create shame-free environments where it's not just okay to talk, it's expected in small groups to share about what's happening behind the scenes and get help. So we need to surface the predictors. Pre-puberty exposure to porn is a setup for 80% of porn addicts. You saw porn before you had puberty, you're going to have trouble. Abuse, compulsive behaviors, inability to self-correct. Those are all indicators. Somebody needs help. When we talked about should be safe, not just safe, but expected. People have a safe place to share. Finally, let's get rid of the self-sufficient language. Oh, I'll go into the prayer closet. Me and God are going to work this out. Really? How's that going for you? We need to live in consultation. People who are getting not just well from porn addiction, but from any form of sex addiction, at some point will broaden their circle of truth. They might not be in a support group or have access to that immediately, but I hope they will stay open to it. Foster organic trust. And this is really where my relational investment, not my positional authority, but the amount of time I spend in your life where we know each other, earns the trust to go a little deeper than we have in the past. In my groups, we do permission crosstalk. This isn't where I can reach across and pick out the log out of this guy's eye. I have to take it out of mine first. But we, with respect, speak into each other's lives. We got to block the pathways, right? Second order change is grieving those losses. 7 different kinds of father wounds. And I have a little handout for those. So these are some of the ways. I know we didn't get through all this. You can read through the rest of the steps. But here's what I challenge you to do. Everybody who came here, we're breaking up now. You got a handout called Becoming a Safe Male. I want to dare you. In fact, I want to double dare you. Take that home if you have a spouse and see if she could just hear you pledge out loud that first pledge to her. And what you do about the rest of those, maybe she'd like to hear the rest of those. It's a pretty tall order. And maybe you don't feel like, hey, I can pledge this, but I don't know if I can keep it or not. Have some discussion time around that. I do summer workshops on becoming a safe male. I've got 4 groups a week for guys in any kind of trust-building journey, whether they're a sex addict or not. They still need some help building back trust if their spouse is feeling betrayed. Any final questions? We'll dismiss here. Thanks for letting me go over a couple minutes. Thanks for coming.